So, as some of you already know, but not everybody, I lost my mom just a couple days ago. And so much stuff has already transpired, and I'm sure more will, but I just feel like I should share what I've learned so far, because there's a lot of stuff, unless you've ever been through that, you just don't know. And I don't know about anybody else, but when I'm put in these positions and I don't know what I'm doing, I call my mom. So what do you do when it's your mom that's going and you can't call her? There's all kinds of stuff, and I just think that everybody should be aware. My biggest fear was that, right now with COVID, that my mom would die alone and afraid, and she doesn't deserve that. So that really freaked me out the whole way. When I was coming home, the whole drive here, I was just not okay thinking about my mom being alone. But we were very, very blessed. I can't tell you if it was God that just handled the situation and knew that my mom didn't deserve to die alone, or if it was the fact that while I'm not intimidating at all, us as a group, we're kind of a group of ragtag individuals. It was my uncle, my brother, my two sons, my sister, and myself. And like I said, I know that I'm not intimidating. My meanest mug is laughable. But the rest of the gang don't look like people you want to mess with. And so I don't know if it was the gleam in our eye or if it was God himself. Either way, my mother did not die alone, and these doctors and nurses broke protocols and made sure of it. So I am unbelievably grateful for that we didn't have to resort to, the measures that we were willing to resort to, because, we had a plan B. I won't tell you what that plan B was, because it was not nice. Nobody was going to get hurt, but we were definitely all going to spend some time in jail. But we were willing to do whatever to ensure that my mother would not die alone or afraid. But like I said, we had an amazing group of doctors and nurses that made sure that my mom didn't die alone. We everybody got to say their goodbyes, and my brother held her hand to the very end. My sister and I were in there, but we kind of had to leave, and we're back and forth off and on, and that's one of the things I want to talk to you guys about. So one of the first things I want to do is just maybe kind of cover some of the rumors that I heard going into this, and some of the facts that I know now, having been through it. People really are dying alone. You are not allowed to go into these hospital rooms of a COVID positive patient. And even if the patient is not COVID positive, and they're in the ICU or on a floor with other COVID positive patients, you are not allowed to go in there to be with your family. And that's a really real thing, which is probably the most awful thing that I've ever heard. And I am planning on making it my life's work to make sure that that never happens to anybody, because I cannot imagine having to live with that. That's awful. And if you have had to live through that, my deepest sympathy and condolences go out to you and your family. And I can't imagine your pain, and I am so sorry to have to compound the loss of a loved one with something as ridiculous and tragic as not being able to be there with them. Is disgusting, and it should never happen to anybody for any reason, period. First thing, right off the top, is that the rumors are true, that you cannot be there for your family. The second rumor that I heard, the second one that I heard was that if the outlook is not so good, that the doctors are not really willing to put in the effort to save the life of a COVID positive patient if it's going to take a great amount of work, or if the odds are not in the favor of the patient. And I can't speak for every doctor, and I can't speak for every hospital, but my experience, and I won't tell you the hospital because I don't want anybody to get in trouble, my experience was not that at all. These doctors and nurses were willing to take any measures that they could, or that we wanted to take. They were willing to do anything that we wanted them to save her life. So I hope that what has happened is that, the rumors about, these heartless doctors are just that they're rumors, or that they're very rare instances, because it was not the case at all. In my experience with my mom, it was not the case at all. These doctors were people. They were regular people, and they very, very genuinely cared, and they very genuinely listened, and they were very upfront and forthcoming with us, and they were great. They were really, really great. I couldn't have asked for anything more. And really, I went in ready to fight, willing to fight. I went in assuming that I was going to have to fight for everything, and that was not the case at all. So again, I mean, I don't want to say a great experience, because it was the most awful thing I've ever been through, but as far as the worst thing ever happening, it happened in the best way possible, I guess. One other thing that I kind of noticed was, people have all these videos going into these hospitals, and they're empty. They walk into the waiting room, and it's just this empty hospital, and nobody's there, and so it makes it look like these doctors are not, the hospitals aren't full, so on and so forth. And that's what it looked like at the hospital my mom was at. There was one person in the emergency waiting room, and it really looked kind of desolate, and I was like, holy shit. But the fact of the matter is that when you kind of got behind the doors and you went down to the ICU, it was overrun. They had extended the ICU outward into what it used to be. I don't know what. They did have to expand their ICU, and it was mostly because of COVID patients. They had, containment measures. There was one room that was really, really kind of scary, like extra contained. It was like contained and then contained again, so that was kind of creepy. But the room that my mom was in, there was like this sliding glass door and this, I don't know, kind of air circulation or pumping system. I don't know, to keep. It was a containment that contained her. And my mom, I guess it's probably pretty important. My mom smoked for 30, 40 years. I know she literally started smoking cigarettes when she was 10 years old, and she smoked until, I don't know, 5 years ago. And she's 62, I think. So she smoked for a really, really long time. And because she smoked for a long time, she had COPD. And we have watched this COPD progress from, like a smoker's cough to she's been on oxygen 24/7 for probably about 5 years, 3 to 5 years, maybe a little longer. I don't know. But her general health has gone down. So she was at end stage COPD. We knew that she was going to die, and she was COVID positive, and it was COVID that kind of pushed her over the edge, but she had end stage COPD. I would not classify her as a COVID death. Any cold could have been the catalyst for her death. So that's that. She was COVID positive though, but she died from end stage COPD, and she also, I can't remember the name of it, she had a heart problem. She didn't have a heart attack, but she did have like stress on her heart. It wasn't like clogged arteries. It was stress, and like her valve on the right side, I think, was only operating at like 25% or something. So it was pretty bad. It was definitely pretty bad. So I think that maybe not all, but maybe some of the videos that are coming out online showing these empty waiting rooms might be misleading. You know, I still, even though I have just lost my mom in this, I still think that COVID has been overblown. I think that it's very important, very, very important that we protect the older people of our population, and that we protect the most vulnerable people who have these comorbidities and a weakened immune system. I think it's very, very important that we protect them 110% every way that we can. But I also think that it's very important that the rest of us who are not, more than likely not going to die from this, get back to normal and reopen and develop a herd immunity to protect. One of the other rumors that I heard was that if you die COVID positive, that you have to be cremated, and they have to do it within, like 24 hours or something like that, and that is not true. I literally was at the funeral home today, and my mom wanted to be cremated, so that's what we're doing. But I did ask, the funeral director guy, if that was true, and what he told me was that it might vary state to state, but in this state, and to the best of his knowledge, that's absolutely not true. If they die COVID positive, they have to be embalmed, which makes complete and total sense, but they're doing open caskets and all that. And he told me that they personally, their area for their funeral homes, which they have, I think, 5 in their group that they own, and they have not seen an increase in numbers, really, like during the whole pandemic. At no point have they been overwhelmed, and at no point have they really seen like excess of bodies. It's kind of business as usual. They really haven't had a lot of excess mortality in this area. Whether or not it's like that in other areas, I can't tell you, but in this area they have not seen any excess mortality. So I just want to briefly share with you kind of how it went for us, and if you are going through something similar, hopefully this will prepare you for what's about to happen, or help answer any questions that you might have, or let you know what you have as far as rights go, and what it means, what things mean, and how you have to handle them. So one of the first things that we did when I got into town, we went straight to the hospital. My sister met us there, and we had a meeting with the main doctor of like the ICU, and the nurse practitioner, and another nurse, and the respiratory therapist guy. And it was like a 45-minute meeting, and they, just laid it out for us, everything that she had wrong with her, and we asked, just keep it real, like, what's it looking like, and they had some optimism, but also not so much, and also their concern was, even if they kept her alive, if they were able to keep her alive, that her quality of life would be shit, and her quality of life prior to this was already kind of shit. She couldn't go anywhere. This would have been a great time for a will. What did she want? And my mom was very clear. My whole life, my brother and sister, we all knew that she would absolutely not want to be, a vegetable on tubes, that she would not want a quality of life that was no quality of life. She made that very clear to us, literally my entire life. But my mom did not write it down. She didn't have a last will and testament. She didn't have, what she wanted, what her wishes were. And I am going to, when I get home, write a will, because I do not ever want to put my children in this position. And because while my mom was clear my whole life, my sister and I were in this position where we had to make these terrible decisions. And even though my mom has always been clear about what she wanted, if it would have, you'll understand in a minute when I get to it how it played out, but if it would have played out to where, my sister or myself would have had to say, do not resuscitate, do not re-intubate, whatever, let her die. First of all, I would have had to question that my whole life. Second of all, the other members of our family, would have then resented me and or my sister and been like, oh, you can't, I don't know. I don't know if that's really what would have happened, but I could see that happening very easily in a family, to have, the head person make a decision that others don't agree with and have to live with that. It could destroy a family. So that's why a will is really important. I didn't really realize that a will was anything more than who gets what. That's not so. As adults, even as healthy adults, I think it's really important that we write our wishes down so that we don't leave our loved ones with these fucked up decisions to have to make. Because we had doctors ask the most awful questions. We asked, okay, so we're going to try and take this tube out. If her lung collapses again, do you want us to stick the tube back in? Well, yeah, always. My choice for her is going to be make her live. I don't care. Let's call the witch doctor. I don't care what we have to do. You make her live. But that's not what my mom wanted, and I knew that. But I can't. It's my mom, and I don't care how she's here. I just want her here because I'm a selfish asshole. I don't want her to live in pain, of course not, but I also don't want me to live without my mom. So, anyways, it's just a lot easier if it's right there in black and white exactly what they want to be done. So I think it's really important that we all take care of that. So we had this meeting, and like I said, they laid it all out for us, told us, what happened when she first came in, where she was, what they had done so far, and what the next steps were going to be. And, during this whole process, she was intubated basically right away, which freaked me out, because I know that we've all learned now that that's why a lot of the people in New York died right away, is because they were intubated and they didn't need to be. They just needed to be on oxygen. But she was intubated, and they had her on the very lowest setting for the ventilator, which was, kind of a relief that they had her on the low setting. But the goal, is to get them off of the ventilator as quickly as possible. And she also had a collapsed lung, so she had to be, had a tube from the outside of her. It was a suggestion that I would like to make, and was my plan, because I didn't think initially that they were going to allow us to be in her room, was I brought a little webcam, and I was going to ask them to put the webcam in the room. And I'm sure it varies from state to state. I don't know what the laws are there. If there's more than one patient in the room, you might have some trouble with it. But if there's not more than one patient in the room, I cannot see how they could possibly deny you that. So if you go buy a little web camera that you can access from your phone, and make them put that in your loved one's room so that you can monitor them all the time. You need to know what's going on back there, period. Another thing that I did during that first meeting was got a complete list of medication and dosages that she was on. And they can do that really fast. They can just print it out. It took like 30 seconds for her to get me that list. And then, if you'd be amazed how quickly you can become a researcher if you're not already. So, just look at everything that they have her or your loved ones on, and make sure that they are, using the latest treatments available. our doctors were, and not only that, but they were willing. I brought up ivermectin. It's not something that's even really, approved for COVID use, but and it wouldn't have helped my mom because it was the COPD, not the COVID, that was killing her. But they were. So do your due diligence. Look in the journals, New England Journal of Medicine, Nature Science. Just look in the journals and look at the research that's being done right now, that's being peer reviewed as you speak. Look into the body of literature that's out there and make sure that everything that can be done is being done. Blood clots is like a huge concern with the COVID, and they had her on the medication to, not a blood thinner. It was cooler than that, but they had her on all the right shit. But I didn't think that they would even know about that, but they did. But I'm sure not every doctor does, especially one that's very busy. One that's overwhelmed with COVID patients does not then have the time to go home for 4 hours and read all the journals and come back. They need to sleep at some point. So make sure that they listen to you, and make sure that you're also, each state does have different laws and rules and regulations and rights, but you always have rights. So look into those, find those out, and don't let anybody take advantage of you. Like I said, I was prepared for the fight, and thank God I didn't have to fight, because that would have just been the worst. So I'm just so grateful that my situation was okay, but I know for so many it hasn't been. And the less you know, the more easy you are to slough off or push to the side or take advantage of or say no to. So learn really quickly. It's not hard. Look it up. Just look it up. Patient rights laws in your state. It's there. It's all there, and it's not even hard to find. So make sure you know what you're talking about. Make sure you know your rights. Make sure that you are doing everything that you can do. Another very important thing, if you have a loved one that has been intubated, more than likely they have also been sedated. And I think it's very important that you all understand there's a very big difference between sedated and knocked out. If you're been put under anesthesia, you're knocked out cold. If you're sedated, you are not unconscious. You are consciously aware of your surroundings. You can hear things that are going on. You're more or less just paralyzed so that you're not feeling the pain of the intubation. But your loved one, if they are sedated, they are conscious. They are not knocked out sleeping through this entire thing. They are there without you, alone and afraid and unaware of exactly what it is that's going on and where they're at and whatnot. So it's really, really important that be communicated to them. One thing that I did bring up before I knew that they were going to be as great as they were and let us see my mom, was that, we're adults. I'll sign whatever you need me to sign. I am aware of, the possible danger that I am putting myself in by exposing myself to the COVID. And I promise that I will, follow all recommendations as far as quarantining afterwards in an effort not to spread the virus, whatever. But I'm an adult, and I can make that decision for myself, whether or not I'm willing to put myself in that danger. And of course, I absolutely was, ready and willing. We all were. So I think that that's a good thing to bring up to them, that you're a consenting adult, and you can, I didn't have to sign anything, but I was willing. Because the concern is that this, that the hospital or whatever will be held liable if you get sick or whatever. They'll be held liable for that, and that's not fair at all. But it's also not fair for you to be kept away from your loved one. So I think that, hopefully as a reasonable human being, they'll be able to work something out with you. And again, I've kind of got like a whole brand new mission in life now after experiencing this, because there's some shit that's, sort of, I feel like it's like an unspoken understanding or a common courtesy. But those common courtesies are not always followed. It needs to be regulation, rules, laws, whatever. So now that has to be my mission in life, to make sure that nobody ever has to go through such awful things as not being allowed to see their loved one, period. So yeah, The questions, I have two questions that we were asked, and I actually recorded the conversation, so I think I'll just insert that here so you guys can hear firsthand the questions. And I recorded the conversation, the initial conversation that we had with the doctors while they were explaining everything, but I won't put you through that. But yeah, so these questions were questions that were posed to us, and there are just shit questions that nobody should ever have to answer, because you're already freaking stressed out enough, and to have to be responsible for somebody's life like that is terrible. So make a will, even if it's unofficial. Write the shit down and stop smoking cigarettes. If you smoke cigarettes, you stop right now, because I promise you, you don't want to die the way that my mom did. It did not. It was not peaceful. I mean, it was, but trust me, you don't want to die like that. You don't, and you don't want your kids to
stop by this morning and let me know that they're planning on potentially getting that chest tube out, that one they put in for that collapsed lung.
Yeah.
We're going to try to take that out probably today.
Okay.
And so she wanted me to just make you guys aware and have you kind of thinking about, if her lung collapses again, do you guys want that put back in?
Okay.
So that's kind of the first thing.
Okay.
And then with the chest tube coming out, we might start trying to wean her off the ventilator.
Right.
And so eventually, if we are to get to a point where she's ready to be extubated or a breathing tube taken out,
right.
If she started for distress again, the other thing we want you guys kind of thinking about, would you want us putting that breathing tube back in if we took it out? You went into respiratory distress again. So,
okay.
And like I said, we're just kind of having this conversation. A test tube is likely coming out.
Okay.
Today. That might be a decision. Put it back in if something happens.
Do I call you back, or do we come up there, or what's, because I can't give that answer. I have to wake my sister up, and we have to talk about it and stuff. So
right. And we don't need an answer right now.
Right.
You can always call us and let us know what you're thinking.
Okay.
And a number, and I'll make sure to give that to our weekend as well.
Okay.
You guys should be able to get a Harry over the weekend.
Right.
But we just kind of, this conversation was just on your radar and thinking about coming up in the future.
Right. Yep. Okay. Well, that's a lot to think about, and thank you. Luckily, it's a couple blocks away, so we all went there. My sister and I were allowed in the room at the same time, and just so you know, it was like totally quarantined off, and anytime we had to go, or anytime we were allowed into the room, we were covered, PPE, head to toe, mask, shield, nightgown thing, gloves, whole 9 yards. We were totally covered. But yeah, we went into the room, and she saw us, and she knew that I was there, and she knew my sister was there, and we were able to ask her, are you in pain, or we asked her a lot of things, but we asked her the hard questions. She was able to nod yes or no, and kind of make little faces and shrug her shoulders. So, we were like, we have the doctors here. We told her, you're in the hospital, you've been intubated, this is what happened, do you remember what happened? And this is what the doctors are telling us. So we need to know, do you want us to have you resuscitated? If they extubate you and you can't breathe, do you want to be intubated again? If they take the tube out of your lung and your lung collapses again, do you want them to stick the tube back in? And my mom, absolutely not. She was ready to go. She was like, no. And I'm like, if you want to fight, we'll fight with you. These doctors are willing to do everything they can to fight. I know you're a fighter. No, she didn't want to. I'm like, I want to try for a week? Can we try for a week or 3 days or 2? She was like, no. She was ready to go right then. I was like, well, hold the horses. But anyways, again, super blessed. We didn't have to make those choices for her. She came to long enough to answer all of our questions and to know, that we were all there. My uncle and my brother and my two oldest sons were able to come in and talk to her. She stayed awake long enough for all of that. And she just made it very clear that she didn't want to, she was tired. She didn't want to fight anymore. Take the fucking tubes out and let her go. And it all happened really fast after that. I didn't think it was going to happen like right then, but it's what she wanted. So as everybody kind of went in and talked to her, I left because I needed to get my shit together, and I needed to accept the fact that my mom's probably gonna die, which I actually accepted the minute that I heard that she was in the ICU and intubated. It was on my heart. I really grieved started grieving before I even lost her, because I knew we were going to. But anyways, I left. I've never been through this before. I don't know how it works. I figured, tomorrow we would start trying to remove tubes and see how it went. That is not what happened at all. We were all back at the hotel room, and the doctor called and was like, "Where the hell are you guys at? What are you doing? You need to get back here." And made it kind of clear to us that really we were prolonging this pain, that my mom was in pain and she's ready to go, and we were just extending it. So we went back, and it sounds terrible, but in my mind, they were going to put her to sleep. They were just going to put her to sleep. But I very quickly learned that they can't do that. That's illegal. It's against the law. You can't do that, which is wrong on so many levels. My little sister made a very valid point. Like, if you go to prison for murdering or whatever, and you get the death penalty, you are then brought out and lethally injected and put to sleep and die peacefully. But if you are a great person and don't break the law and have chosen to, not fight anymore and die, you don't get to go peacefully. You have to fucking suffer and go through this. That's not right. It's not right. It's not right at all. Well, maybe not all. Anybody who's my age or older has heard of Dr. Kevorkian. This guy they called it assisted suicide. And that's my mom didn't commit suicide. She was aware that she was going to die, chose not to fight. But it's not a suicide, not by any stretch of the imagination. She chose not to continue to live by machine. She couldn't breathe on her own. This machine was breathing for her, and she would never be able to breathe on her own. So it's not suicide. It's assisted death. It's making sure that you don't have to suffer, in the end. Because let me tell you, in my imagination, they were going to take out the tubes, and I was still hoping for a miracle that, she would just sit up and take a deep breath and everything would be fine and we'd get her home. But I knew that probably wasn't very likely. But still, like, the worst case scenario in my was like, she would struggle for a second and, take a couple wheezing breaths and then be gone. And that is also not what happened. It was terrible, really. Give me a second, and then I'll tell you. My sister and I, my brother said that he was going in there, he would hold her hand till the end, and he did. And I'm pretty sure that I feel sorry for, I'm so grateful to him that he did that. But also, like, mentally, he's probably super scarred, because anyway, my sister and I were really kind of leery on being in there. I didn't, the doctor was like, she'll probably struggle to breathe, and, these noises are natural, and these noises are natural. And, I didn't really want to. So the doctor went back and asked my mom if she wanted us in there, and she said yes. But I don't think she even understood really what was going on. So, I put my fake face on and pretended like I wasn't scared to death or whatever. And we went back there and held her hand, and it was okay for a few minutes. They pulled out the tube that was keeping the collapsed lung up first. And like I said, it was only a few minutes before that collapsed again. And at that point, she was in pain. And she was making it clear that she was in pain. So they started, they gave her a little bit more drugs, and then they gave her a little bit more drugs so they could extubate her. And you don't ever want to see an extubation. I wanted to kill everybody involved. It was terrible, terrible, and very painful. And her voice was just shot. She could barely whisper, but she could talk. And she was in pain. She was in a lot of pain. So, they are restricted in the amounts of drugs and painkillers and shit that they can give you. They can't kill you. They can't kill you. Even though you're going to die, and even though that would be the nice thing to do, they can't do it. It's against the law. So I think that's dead ass wrong, which I never did before, but now having been through this, it's wrong. It's not okay. If you're going to die and you know you're going to die, they should be able to assist you in dying so that you can go painlessly and not have to suffer and be afraid and have to live through not being able to breathe, So, but they couldn't. But the doctor did at pretty quickly on, because we were freaking the fuck out. We were freaking out. My mom was, it was terrible. It was really, really, really terrible. My sister and I had to leave. Well, she told us to get out. My sister's like literally in the corner of the room, had her hands over her ears, rocking back and forth. Like, no, it was awful. My mom was yelling and gasping and gurgling, and I can't unhear this now. It's with me forever. And that wasn't even the worst part of it. But, it was at that point that I was like, let's go. She's like, no, she wants us here. I was like, she doesn't want us here for this. She would never ask us she would never damage us like this. She wanted us here so that we knew that she knew what she was doing, and that, everybody knew we loved each other, which of course we did. And that, she could say the last couple of things she needed to say. She does not want us here for this, to damage us. She would never ask us to do that. So we left, and we just went right outside the room, and my sister kept peeking in there, and we were listening for the machines. But this process is not quick at all. It is so long and painful and terrible. The doctor did step in, really when we left the room, and we were just like looking at her like, please do something. My mom is in pain, and she said to the nurse, don't let there be any in between, period. You stack it right on top of each other. I don't give a shit. And she said to him, it doesn't matter. At this point, we know she's not going to live. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. You make sure she's not in pain. And again, I don't know if that was protocol or not. I'm going to say not, but I am eternally grateful for that decision, because oh my God, if my mom would have had to suffer, it would have made it even worse. And I pray to God that this doctor doesn't ever get in any trouble, because she did the right thing. So we, went in and out, and my mom, before we left the room, and before they hit her with a lot of drugs, she told us get out, and my brother's like, I'm not going anywhere, and he didn't. And I don't know where the strength came from for him to go through that, because it was bad. It was really bad, you guys. And this isn't like a 5 or 6 minute process. This literally, my mom struggling, and it's not something like physically. If you're drowning, you drown because you're gasping for air. Your brain knows you can't breathe underwater, but your body can't help it. My mom knew she didn't want to live, that she was ready to die, but your body can't help it. So you're reaching for this air, and it is just terrible. And it would have been much, much better, and forgive the comparison. I'm not comparing my mom to a dog, but it would have been so much better if they could have just, put her to sleep like you do with an animal. They do an animal that justice. Why would you not do that for a human being? That's terrible. That's fucking terrible. Nobody should have to go out like that. If you know you're gonna die peacefully. Don't struggle for hours anyways, it was really, really bad, and really, really hard and wrong. And like I said, the doctor, thank God, did the right thing, and my mom went out like a fucking rock star, high as a kite, undoubtedly, and I am so grateful for that. But I would have really loved that, once those tubes were removed and we were very much aware that there was no way that she was going to live unless we re-intubated her or whatever, that the doctor or whoever would have been able to step in and just put her to sleep, and we wouldn't all have to live with, these. I'm never going to be able to erase that from my memory. My brother, we left for the hardest part of all of this. I wasn't even there. We were right outside the door, but I didn't have to hear, and my brother did, and it's for life. You can't unhear that, and my mom didn't deserve that at all. It's scary when you can't breathe, and anyway, so that's part of where my newfound mission in life is coming from. But so that's what happened. After a couple of hours, something really strange happened, and I don't know what you believe as far as the world is concerned, in God and heaven and hell. I believe in God, I believe in heaven, and I believe in hell. But something kind of really strange happened that, and don't think that I don't care if you think I'm crazy. We all know I'm crazy, but we think that my mom's spirit or her soul or whatever left before her body did. And here's why. So my brother was in the room. Me and my sister were outside of the room, and the nurse had just brought over some chairs because I was like on the floor, bawling my eyes out. And whatever, my sister and I were just talking and being upset that my mom was dying so slowly, and painfully. And the nurse had brought over some chairs, and her and I were both kind of sitting down, and at the same time, the exact same second, both of us, our eyes got big, and we just kind of looked at each other. Nobody said a word. And we could see my brother, and we looked at my brother, and he was looking at us with the same look on his face. And we just all kind of looked at each other for a second, and then, I don't know, I can't explain it. So a couple minutes had passed, and my sister said to me, I feel really weird. And I was like, oh my gosh, me too. And what I said was, maybe there's a gas leak or something, because this feeling that we all three got at the exact same second was a feeling that I have never, ever felt before. And I've done a lot of drugs, and I've had a lot of, different traumas. I've suffered loss, and this feeling I've never felt before. Nothing, even anything like it. And the way describing it's kind of hard. It was a warm and fuzzy feeling, but not like good warm and fuzzy like you get on Christmas morning, or you get after a couple glasses of wine or something like that. Not like that kind of warm and fuzzy. It was like physically, actually warm and fuzzy, but not like the best. It wasn't like it was comforting though. Like I stopped crying, and so did everybody else. But it was like, it made my whole body, my person, feel like and the same thing for them too. We've talked about it, and nobody can really describe it, but it felt like I wasn't real. Like it was virtual reality, but in my body, or like you were a painting or something. I don't know. I can't. It felt like if I tried hard enough that I could just sink through the floor, or that I could dissolve into sand. I don't know. It was a very strange, very unique feeling, but it stayed. It did not go away. And since, we kind of all came to the agreement that maybe, that was when my mom's spirit left her body, because after that moment, she didn't speak. She didn't say anything else after that. And prior to that, she was talking, and kind of, it made sense at first, but then it stopped making sense. It was just kind of random, whatever. I guess that's normal, but it was kind of weird. But she didn't speak after that at all. So I think that's when she left, and her body stayed, for way too long. But yeah, so that happened, and it stayed all the way until the next day, really. So like I said, my brother stayed and literally held her hand until she passed away. And then he had to sign, a paper for the death certificate that he was there when she died. And then came, the arrangements. I have never been responsible for something like that before, and if I ever was put in a situation like that, what I would have done is call my mom, and she would have told me what to do. So the three of us kids we don't know. Well, what does arrangements mean? What the fuck does that mean? An edible arrangement? Like, we don't know. So figuring that out has been shitty. So the first thing that you should do after your family member dies is get off of their person, any personal effects. So like my mom had diamond earrings and that she never took off. And my brother got those out of her ears, and those go to my sister. She had a barrette in her hair that I have, and I've just kept it in my pocket like a worry stone. I mean, so whatever personal items on her person that you want, you should take, which sounds terrible, but it's the reality. Then the first part of the arrangements, when people say arrangements, the first part of that is to choose a funeral home. We literally got online and Googled, funeral homes in the area, and went off the one with the most stars and the most positive reviews. And that's how we chose our funeral. But we ended up not using their services. We used one of their sister services, and that was because we didn't want anything but the cremation. We literally ordered our own urns because we're gonna split her up. And the funeral home that we went to was more like a lot of services. They did, they did the services. They had the wake and just a lot of things that we just didn't need. We just wanted cremation, and really that's it. All her services outside of that, we are taken care of outside of, the funeral home. So he was like, well, it would be more cost effective for you guys to use one of our sister properties. And that's what they do is just, straight cremation and nothing more, nothing less, nothing fancy. So we ended up doing that. The guy was great at the funeral home. He was really nice, really understanding, and again, very straightforward with us. So it was okay, not great. It was terrible, but great is the wrong word. It was as good as it could be, I guess. But I don't want to say great because this whole thing, nothing about this was great. It was all awful. It's my mom. She's not here anymore. I'm not happy about the situation at all. But it could have been even more terrible than it already is. And luckily, God just made sure that the people in our path, all of them have been amazing people. Very kind, very caring, very compassionate, very honest people. So I'm very, very grateful for that. So I just feel like great was the wrong word. Anyways, so you need to pick your funeral home. You need to go and have a meeting and tell them what it is you're looking for. They offer a huge range of services, and make your choices, whatever. And your loved one, they don't do anything until it's paid for, and so that's part of it. And needs to go quick so that they're not just sitting in a meat locker, which is terrible, but that's the reality of the situation. So that needs to be like first thing on your list, like right away. Get that taken care of. Some of the questions that they're going to ask you that maybe you might not know is, what city and state was your parent born in? What is the full name of your grandpa and grandma, or their mother and father, whatever. And those were the three questions that really we didn't know what city my mom was born in. We knew she was born in California, and we knew where she grew up, but we didn't know where she was born. So we had to call like aunts and uncles to get that figured out. And then, like, we know my grandpa's name, but we didn't know for sure my grandmother's like maiden last name. So again, we kind of had to dig for that. But yeah, so those are answers that you need to have for the death certificate. They asked us how many copies of the death certificate did we need, and we got 2 copies of it, one for me, one for my sister, and we got 2 copies because you need it to close accounts, to close. There's just certain things you need it for, and they actually gave us a list, but I don't have that list right now of common reasons why you would need a death certificate. So get an appropriate amount of copies. If depending on kids, maybe you just need 1, maybe you need 4, I don't know. My siblings and my oldest 2 children and myself are all going to have tattoos, and we are going to have my mother's ashes mixed into the ink and have her tattooed into our bodies, which sounds strange to some, I'm sure, but I don't care. That's what we're doing. And we told the funeral director this, and he is going to sift through her ashes to get us the finest ash to have added to our ink. So that's a thing. It's really an actual thing. So if you plan on doing something like that, just know that they can do that for you. So he's going to put the finer ash to the side for us to have for our tattoos. Also, you don't have, they will write an obituary for you if you would like, but I am going to write the obituary. And with our company that we went through, it is a free service that they offer. They put it online, her obituary, and we'll leave, a place for people to comment or, share their stories or whatever, because I have been inundated with messages and emails and shit. And while they're wonderful, they really are. It's kind of a lot right now. And there's people that I don't even know messaging me and telling me, how great my mom was and she did this or that, and that's great. And I want to hear every story, just not right now. They will, put it online and tell everybody when, the funeral or when the wake or whatever is that you're planning on having, and we're going to do a digital thing. And they can set that up for you too, but we have, somebody who's capable of setting that up for us. The funeral home and the funeral director, that's a huge choice. And I think if you were to make the wrong choice there, that it could be, again, worse than it already is. And again, we got really blessed with a cool guy who wasn't trying to, rip us off or whatever. He sent us to his sister property, and it saved us a lot of money, like a lot. And also, if you want to put, not an ad, but whatever, to put it in the newspaper, the obituary, and notify people, that's a thing that you kind of need to get going. And it really sucks to kind of have to do all this stuff, because really you just want to lay in bed and cry, but I guess it's also a good thing because it makes you not lay in bed and cry. So that's another step, and really that's as far as we've gotten in the process. That's as far as we've gotten in the process concerning arrangements anyways. Again, a will would, be a good idea because of your personal belongings, your assets, whatever. Again, my mom has always been very clear about her wishes. I think each one of us kind of know what belongs to us, and none of us are willing to fight over anything. My mom didn't have a whole lot, so most of the stuff that she has that we're going to have to split up or whatever is more sentimental. Yeah. So yeah, that has been my experience thus far. I've read a little bit about, you always hear grieving is a process, so I read about the process of grieving, and it turns out that the grieving process is not really a process at all. It's a process that's totally different for each individual, and it is a process that can, start and finish basically anywhere. For us, for me, I don't think it's a process that will ever truly end, even though I have faith. Thank God I have faith, because I can't imagine what I would do without my faith. I think for me, probably, I would imagine that throughout my entire life, randomly things will, make me cry. My mom was really, really an amazing, very special, great woman. And if she would have just sucked, it wouldn't suck so bad. But she didn't. She was amazing, and she has impacted every aspect of my life. And there's like nothing that I can do that doesn't make me think of her. But I know she wouldn't want me to walk around sad, and I'm not sad for her. I'm sad for me, So I guess eventually I might stop feeling sorry for myself, but probably not all the way. So my advice would be to, just make sure you know what's going on every step of the way. Do the camera thing if they're not letting you back there with your loved one. And if you're preparing for the worst, start looking into, funeral homes and thinking about what it is that your loved one wants. And then you have to go through the really awkwardness, which is what I'm getting ready to go do right now, of going through their stuff and taking what you want or whatever. And that's really awkward. It feels uncomfortable even to say, and makes me feel greedy or something, but it's not what it is. It's just what has to happen.